The fighting in the Fangmoor has ceased. All within it now brace for what comes next, as the final schism begins. Welcome back, everyone. I am the World Archivist, here to tell you the stories of the wider multiverse. Today, we reach the finale of the Fangmoor series, as we cover the final moments of several participating factions. Now, before we begin, there have been some delays in regards to lore gathering, so the finale will end up being split into two separate parts. Now, as always, if you enjoy what I do, consider leaving a like, a conversational comment to help with the algorithm, share the video around, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe. And with that out of the way, on to the story. Golta placed her hand on the giant beetle's shell as Morgan instructed. Can you feel it, Golta? The flow of life through Brother Beetle? The little girl frowned.
But sir, it's dead.
Morgan smiled. Death is an important part of life, Golta. The beetle is dead, yes, but countless living creatures are already feeding on its body. See the fang marks on its carapace, the fungus growing on its back, the flesh rotting into the soil. Death is not the end of life. It's life flowing from one form to the next. Golta looked at the enormous carcass and understood. She felt the flow of life in her outstretched palm. The beetle was dead, but its body still pulsed with energy, moving like a current into the ecosystem around them. She suddenly became aware of her own place in the ecosystem. She felt small, humbled, proud to be part of something so immense. Always remember, little Golta, our story does not start with us. It starts with all the animals, the plants, the people whose lives and deaths have led to our moment. And when we die, the story will continue forever.
But what about before and after that?
Morgan frowned. It was a good question. He wondered what to tell the little girl. The Undermire shows us that life and death is an eternal cycle. Nothing can come of nothing. And if there was some void before life and death, some great oblivion, it is our duties as Knights of the Undermire to ensure that the multiverse never sees it again, and all life stories continue. Morgan swung again, and his blade clashed with Golta's. Tendrils of fog curled from the rents in his armor like the steam of an engine. Golta's carapace of black steel had turned strike after strike. She was as relentless as the automaton she had scavenged it from. Around them, the Knights of the Undermire battled with their corrupted selves. The endless horde of shades and fogwalkers had driven them from the trees. They were now in the clearing of the Willow, fighting by the charnel pit where the ancient god Jarji Makwa had sat and schemed. You are not listening to reason, Golta, Morgan shouted over the sounds of combat. Oblivion is the source of all creation. The multiverse was born from the void, and it will return and be consumed. This is the life and death of everything, the cycle of the cosmos.
And what of our stories?
Golta yelled as she parried another attack.
You taught me that we fight for the life and death of everything that came before.
A
of everything that comes after. Such grand legacies. Every chapter would be lost.
It already means nothing. What is life and death compared to creation and oblivion? Why resist a power that cannot be stopped? That birthed existence, that has a right to its conclusion.
Because it is our duty as Knights of the Undermire to ensure all life stories continue.
The forest rumbled, and a new legion of knights burst from the tree line. The body of each was made from bundled roots and branches, and their war cry was the haunting song of the Sisters Simulacrum. The forest creatures stampeded through the battle, tearing shades apart and banishing fog walkers with their echoing song. Was this Silex's doing? Morgan snarled, his corporeal form collapsing into a demon of fog and shadow. But before he could escape, an Ent warrior Silex emerged from the battle line and grabbed him around the throat. At the sound of its enchanting verse, the fog of oblivion billowed out from the corrupted knight, leaving his suspended mortal body. Gulta stepped forward.
Sir Morgan, by my blade, I shall rescue you from oblivion and grant you a blessed death. Your story will continue with me.
Beneath his visor, hidden to all, Morgan gave a teary, relieved smile as Gulta drove her sword through his heart. Was this it? Was this what the Lord God would have wanted? Even as he ventured into the fog, even as a bloody melee began against the forces of the swamp, King Charles remained conflicted. The question has plagued him since he first stepped into this damned forest. What did God intend? Was he even doing the right thing? What were they even fighting for here? He knew the oblivion had to be stopped. But when that was accomplished, what then? Though he was somewhat lost in thought, it didn't stop him from blocking a few incoming attacks from a lurcher as his thoughts drifted towards Silex. Now he was truly an enigma. What was his goal? Why did he rebel in the first place? All these questions filled him with rage, which he took out on a nearby enemy. He hated having so many questions remain unanswered. Never before had he been filled with such doubts. Oh, how he wished he was back in Sweden, where he could lead and protect his people. Wait, of course. He wished to safeguard his people. Perhaps Silex wished the same for his own home. While you are correct, that is not the entire reason. Time seemed to have frozen around the king as he turned to see the form of Silex, or rather, a projection. But the aura was unmistakable to the king as he dismounted. Silex, I see you are in good health. Indeed, though I despair to see you fight for Jar. Make no mistake, I fight against the Oblivion, not for the Willow. That is why I speak to you now. You want to know why I rebelled? Well, the answer hasn't changed since Celine. The old system no longer works. Change is needed. A sacrifice Jar is not too keen on. And what might that be? The sacrifice of our divine power. The Willow wanted to keep the gods divine at the expense of mortals. But You would make that sacrifice? For us? Mortals who are doomed to die? Yes, so that you may have the chance to live. Charles's eyes widened before he smiled in understanding, bowing to the god before him as he spoke. Forgive me for not seeing before. All is forgiven. Take heart, young king, for your crusade is now complete. When this battle is over, head to where you first set roots in this forest. There, you will find your way home. With a nod of gratitude, King Charles mounted his horse once more. The apparition of Silex began to disappear as he made one last comment. One more thing, Charles. This next part is probably going to hurt. Sure enough, once time resumed, an armored fist collided with his face. Norio wasn't sure how long he had been traveling for. Like many things here, time had neither sense or empathy. Trying the trick he had been taught when his group first arrived at this place, he got a measurement of 16 fingers again. He turned instinctively to comment to one of his fellows, instead finding loneliness and bitter reminders of what had passed. Pushing forward, he spotted the similar shape of a shrine that dotted the Fangmoor. Still weary and sore from what had happened, he decided that it was a good place as any to rest, to think, to meditate on memories he wished he could forget. Getting into the position Morokono had taught him, he began to control his breathing, forming the calming rhythm he was familiar with. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. He could feel the weight lifting from his shoulders, his back, his head, his legs? His eyes flicked open, and his stomach turned as he realized he was no longer sitting on the ground. He was rising into the air at an increasingly alarming pace. Seeing the world shrink beneath him, his mind raced to understand what was happening, before a blinding light consumed him, and everything went black. Coming to with a start and a groan, Norio found himself somewhere both familiar and strangely alien. He was seated in a lavishly furnished seat, the fabric soft but also surprisingly strong, the material seemingly ignoring the claws digging into it. Tables in the style of his homeland were placed on either side of him. Both of these things stood in stark contrast to the rest of the room, which contained seat and tables of far simpler construction and of a much smaller, human-appropriate size. Both the wall ahead of him and the floor underneath him was made of what he had to assume was glass, permitting him an unrivaled view of the forest. Looking around at the tables at his sides, he found a sheet of paper with a message scrawled upon it in Ogronin script. You have done enough, and more. Now rest, warrior. He thought on the message for a moment, and, after letting out a sigh, he relaxed and let himself be at peace for the first time in a long time.